Hi guys, good evening and welcome to the session at UpGrad. Today we have with us Mr. Venky Naravulu, who is a Senior Director PM at bandwidth.com. Mr. Venky is a seasoned product manager with about 20. He's worked at both startups and established corporations and led and managed brand new products as well as established products. He is CSPO certified and passed his CISSP. He's managed product domains covering collaboration platforms, bots platform, messaging ecosystem, and healthcare IT. Today, Mr. Venky is going to talk about a day in the life of a product manager. How the session is going to work is we will have a short presentation first by sir, and which will be followed by a question and answer round. So you guys can post your questions in the chat box right on your right hand side, and we will take it up as and when we go. So over to you.
All right. I hope everybody can hear me. And assuming most of the audience is from India, good evening to all of you. And of course, good morning to whoever is in my time zone. I hope at the end of this session, I'm going to leave you with something that will stick in your head, understand what product management is about. I did see that you guys already have been presenting other sessions on product management. It is really impressive to see that and how you are promoting the education and how people can be successful in the product management. I think Mr. already covered a brief introduction on me. I just wanted to emphasize a couple of quick points. In my 20 years, I didn't start straight away doing all the stuff I'm doing today, obviously. It did take some time, take some education, take some training, and also taking on the challenges of different jobs. I changed jobs at least 6 times. That some people may say it's bad, and I'm saying it's good in a way because each time I went to basically train myself, educate myself, and also challenge myself in a different domain. I was in client-server technologies, healthcare ID, in a traditional company like AT&T, and I went to a startup. I had to do everything myself. In AT&T, I had the luxury of having a team, but here I have to do everything myself. The reason I did that was, again, as I said, this is something I wanted to leave you with, is challenge yourself, try to get into different domains. Even if it's new, train yourself and get into that domain. Okay. I also think it's good to have some kind of a hobby, and mine is running. I do run long distances, like marathon distances. The reason I bring that up, one is, of course, I want to talk about it. Other one is all work and no fun will not help you to be really successful, in my humble opinion. That's my personal experience. So pick up something. I'm not saying go run marathons, but pick up something that you can do. Charity work, running, jogging, exercising, whatever. Try to have a good balance. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, please. And I cannot see the slides, but I'm assuming you're on slide number 3. So slide number 3 said the product manager and the roles they play, right? Let us define what is product manager, right? I gave a very simplistic definition, but there's a lot behind it. You as a product manager, he or she would decide on what are we going to build, why are we doing it, and when are we going to build it? Because you have to time it with the market, correct? You just can't say, I'm going to build something that takes care of payroll for a company and say I'm done, right? You have to know why you're doing it, what exactly you're building it, and when are you going to release it. That's very important. And quite often you do not have to deal with how to build it. The expectation is you're working with an engineering team and you are able to work with them in partnership with them. You would be able to build a product that you think is the best thing to do. Now, a product manager, you have to learn one thing. The person is a leader without any responsibility. And I say that with a lot of emphasis on without authority and without responsibility, because It takes a lot of people skills too, besides the other skills that we will talk about, to manage, work with the team. It's quite often a cross-functional team. And depending on the company that you're working on and the product that you're working on, trust me, sometimes you're doing everything. Sometimes you're working with lots of people and lots of responsibilities. So it is very important to understand that. While you decide the what, why, and when, it's important you work with others to enable how to do it and to enable and champion when to time it in the market and how you want to go about getting across the product that you need to. Okay. A product manager is not a project manager. And I think quite often, in fact, when I was hiring some people, sometimes I get a resume and as I'm reading it, it's very clear that it's only project managing. I'm not downplaying the importance of a project manager. Sometimes if the company is small, guess what? The product manager and the project manager responsibilities overlap. Very simply put, a product manager is meeting the market demand, understands the product characteristics, understands the cost structure for a product, whereas the project manager understands the timeliness of it. They bring into consideration the budget that's required to run the project, and they're focused on deadlines and meeting other coordinated efforts. Okay. You will see I have a slide between the small company and the big company. In the small companies, a product manager may end up doing the project manager's work as well. Okay, let's go down quickly. What are the roles of a product manager? But when I use the word PM for the rest of the presentation, just assume it's product manager. And I only listed a few roles here. That doesn't mean that's it. There's more to it, but these are something that I felt are important. First and foremost is being the strategist, meaning why are you building this product? What next? And you may think of 100 problems to solve. You think you can resolve it by going with your next product, but does it matter to your company, right? What is the ROI? And if you want to build something, are you getting back enough revenue to recoup the cost that goes into building the product and so on? So you have to be the strategist as to deciding what next and why. Then once you decide that, you have to also put the hat of a researcher. I mean, I spend a lot of time, researching articles, and I've given a couple of tips in these slides. So what does researcher mean? Market research. If there is somebody implementing a very cool way of collecting payments, then you need to do research on that if you want to add that to your product. I think in India, Uber teamed up with Paytm, if I'm not mistaken, and they came up with a very cool solution pretty quickly. That doesn't mean you can simply jump in and copy it, but you need to understand how it relates to your product. Does it make sense? So that is the type of research I'm talking about. I'm a data guy, and I believe in analyzing lots of data. So try to collect as much data as you can, because that's more concrete than qualitative analysis. Find out your competition's customers, okay? So for example, if I'm in the messaging ecosystem sending SMS messages, and I know my competition is a company called Twilio, I want to know what their customers are doing. How good are they doing? Why do I do that? Because I want to know what is it that Twilio is giving them that we cannot. So that's the amount of research that I go into. Okay. Then you plan it out, right? You have to plan how to time the products, the features. You can't deliver everything on day one. You'll hear the term the minimum viable product. You have to figure out that as well. So in order to achieve that, you have to wear your planner hat and be able to understand, if I need to build these next 5 features because you're convinced is the best thing to do I have the resources? Does the engineering have the skill sets? How do I plan that out? Again, depending on if you're a small company, you may wear the hat of a project manager and plan out the resources, or you go get the right kind of help. That's what you do there. And once the product is built, you have to execute it. You just cannot blindly wait one fine day the product is done and I'm going to release it, either it is cloud-based or you ship the product, whatever it is. You need to time it, right? So for example, there was a feature that I implemented in one of my products. It was to do with group messaging. and it was to do with the messaging ecosystem. So I worked with marketing, found out when the next webinar or when next user conference is in town or even out of town. Then we prepared a one-pager. In our booth, we had these one-pagers sitting there for people to come and grab it. This is even before the product was live. That means it generates that interest. So you need to plan that as well. So execution is not just releasing a product. You have to find out, okay, I have this product. It's very technical. If a customer reports a problem, is my customer support team trained on the product? Have they been given enough training? Is the documentation up online and ready to go? So you need to think of all of those things. Okay. And the last couple of things quickly, mentoring is, again, if you're in a small company, startup, you do everything yourself. You may have one or two junior product managers or business analysts. Maybe you'll train them, mentor them, let them help you as well. Okay. I always believe in mentoring and growing that person to become the next product manager. Okay. So try to keep that in mind if you have a team that you're supporting. Not just ask them to do the work for you, but also mentor them and coach them so they become, at the end of the day, it's going to help you. You would have always heard this term mini CEO. And again, it all depends on how expansive is the term mini CEO, how much of responsibility you're taking, depending on the product and the size of the company. But CEO is, at least in the latest job at Bandwidth, I was responsible for everything. The pricing, which vendor is going to help us, what kind of message are we going to put out to the customers. I was responsible for everything. It's like I'm running a company, but my company is just my product. Okay. Very quickly, what is the difference between a startup PM and a PM at an established company? The reason why I brought that up is the next couple of slides will show you a comparison of it. A startup PM, what happens is typically you're working on a new product, a new idea, a new concept, and quite often you may have little competition already out there. So your focus is you're doing everything. You're responsible for the vision, the strategy. Your research is more intense because it's a new product quite often, and people are still learning. Sometimes you don't know what your customers don't know. So you will have to be creative in figuring that out. What is that gap the customers are yet to find out? Okay. Going back to a few years ago, I think some people take it for granted today. There were stores, Blockbuster stores were out there, bookstores were out there for people to go buy books. Nobody even dreamt of buying it online. And here comes Amazon and Flipkart. Nobody even thinks of that concept of what was there just about 10, 15 years ago, right? So you will have to think that far in a startup PM. I'm not saying you should not do that in an established company, but it's more intense in the startup. In an established company, what happens is you will have the luxury sometimes, depending on how new or how old you are with the company, somebody is already driving the vision. It's a large company. People have defined roles. The roles and responsibilities are a little more clear. You may have a project manager helping you sometimes. You may have a team of BAs helping you. And the competitive analysis is more structured. Because I use my marketing team to go find out about competition. I don't do it myself because it's quite large. So those are the roles in how they differ if you're a PM at a startup versus an established company. Okay. Again, there is so many ways to this depending on the company. Next slide, please. Okay. Since the theme was a day in the life of a PM, going back to what I just discussed in the previous slide and wearing the hat of a startup PM versus established, let's go through quickly. These are examples from my job. And again, this is a good representation of what happens out there. And somebody can question me, well, I don't do that. I'm at a startup. I agree with that. Again, I said this is a very broad range of things. Okay. Our startup company, an example is I used to work for Core. We worked with the team in Hyderabad, and we were coming up with a messaging and collaboration product. I'm sure many of you have heard of products like Slack or Glip or Cisco's Jabber. So we had a product, something that we were building, and we were trying to compete with those people. So that is the background, right? So what do I do early morning? Obviously coffee. I love coffee. I start my work early in the morning, especially if you have an offshore team. Here I am, the team would have been working, right? I go online and resolve any queries. And we used to use Jira. And for those who may or may not know, Jira is the tool that we used for documenting stories and what goes into your product. So if I said, I need to acquire a customer with 4 clicks and I need to use Facebook as a login mechanism, that's my story that they're building. They had some questions. I go in and answer it. That way I'm not holding anybody up. So I go through that. And since it's an offshore team, sometimes I also schedule calls and walk them through a product feature that I want them to build, giving them the background and things like that. Okay. As I said, I'm a runner, so I try to run almost every day. I'm out for a 1 or 1.5 hour, go run, come back, do your daily routine, and then 8:30 a.m. The status call, so that we don't keep the people back in India too late. We have a status call early in the morning. It's a daily stand-up call. Here is where we are focused on one sprint, only those features. We go through it very quickly, saying, this is what I'm working on, or I am done, and I'm going to pick up another item. And by the way, if I have a hurdle, this is the hurdle I have. Okay. Saying that they don't have a database ready, whatever it is. So once we go through the stand-up call, some people stay back and only focus on the hurdles. The rest go back and do the work. Okay. Then I go into the office and then catch up on more email and clean up any action items. Then I also mentioned around 12 noon, I'm doing some research, right? This is a brand new product and I'm doing some research. For example, we were going to introduce text-based messaging for signing up, right? So typically, if you look at Slack and others, they will let you sign up with an email, but we wanted to use a phone number and we wanted to keep it international as well. So anybody in any country should be able to sign up. So I had to do some research and pick a vendor who would be responsible for sending that text message. I'm sure you all might have used WhatsApp, and you do get that in a message to your phone, to your mobile phone, saying you signed up and here is the code. We had to build that, but I had to go pick a vendor. So I did some research. So that would be a typical thing I would do during lunch or just after lunch. Around 2 o'clock, I'm looking at doing some research. How do I acquire a customer, a developer who's signing up for the bots platform? Because a developer is a different user persona compared to an end user who's using WhatsApp for sending messages to their friends. If somebody is signing up for a platform, it is a developer who's going to sign up. How do I view that person? What do I need? Because a developer has to sign a terms of use. So I need to be that, right? So that's what I was doing some research, and that is something I would put down together. And sometimes after I given a requirement, I understand what goes into it, what are the business rules. I expect the quality assurance team to look at my requirements and put together the test cases. Sometimes either me or the BA or a junior project manager will look at the test cases to make sure we covered everything. That is one of the tasks I would do on and off, right? And around 4 p.m., sometimes we have meetings with the CEO. What do we do for the pricing? Okay, Slack charges per user per month. And by the way, there is some features are free. What do we do? So we do some pricing discussion, product differentiation discussions, and so on. And then after everything is done, I spend at least a couple of hours, 4 to 6 or sometimes 7, and prepare for the next day. So I'm loading up my team in India, in Hyderabad, what they can work on the next day. If there's any pending action items, I sort that out, and then I'm done for the day. Let's come to the established company. I'm using Bandwidth as an example. Here, Bandwidth is a company which provides messaging ecosystem for many companies like Google, RingCentral, companies like that. So here, the product is already established. The big difference is here there is a goal given. You have to generate X millions of dollars in revenue for the year. That means you don't get everything in the month of December, right? You need to be focused. Every month, how much revenue are we getting? Are we making it? Why are we not hitting the numbers? Last month, a customer called GroupMe sent 100,000 messages a day, but I'm checking today, they only sent 50,000. Why is that? So these are the things I'll start looking at usage stats, right? So it's a totally different environment. And of course, even here, I try to keep up with my running as much as I can, obviously. And we do have stand-up calls. This time it's at 9:30 because most of the team is in the US, and some of them in Brazil, and some of them in Ukraine. So we go through the stand-ups. And then after that, I spend some time with the sales guys saying, what are all the sales deals that they are working on? Do they need any help? And do they need any decisions on pricing? Because as I said, I was a mini CEO. If I said the price for a message is going to be 50 cents, and if the sales guy comes and says, hey, this customer wants it for 40 cents, do you approve? Then we have a discussion. Why should I approve? What is the value from the customer, right? So things like that. So you see, it's not product, but it is product related, because at the end of the day, I'm responsible for how much money my product makes for the company. So I need to be involved in those. And then at the same time, I'm getting feedback. Okay, this customer is buying the product because we have these features. And by the way, sales lost a deal because we don't have feature X, Y, and Z. So I need to use that as feedback and decide, should it go on my roadmap the next time I build another feature? Okay. Even here, I do some research, but here it is more because the product domain is defined, because people have been messaging for 50 years. So what has changed in the past 50 years is getting commoditized. How can I make my product even more cheaper? And I depend a lot on established independent researchers. I'm sure you guys must have heard of Gartner, IDG, OVM, and I've mentioned some links at the end of this slide deck. You can start with those, but you all by now would be experts in searching things on the web, but I'm just throwing you some pointers. So what I do is I depend on those people for research, because established domain, industry researchers, and quite often you guys should have paid attention to what is known as a magic quadrant by Gartner. It is their way, Gartner's way of representing. They pick a domain. It could be mobile application platform development, or it could be network routing security, or it could be messaging ecosystem. They pick a domain, define it, and then they say, these companies are doing good. They're the leaders. And by the way, these are the newcomers. Watch them. So I pay a lot of attention to that. I want my company to be there. What do I do to get there? Okay. And as we go through the afternoon, I meet up with our customer support. I'm plugged in. We use a tool called Zendesk for trouble tickets. And I told the customer support team, anything that is a severity level of high and above, or important and above, or critical, include me on the ticket. So I'm in the background looking at only high profile tickets. That gives me an idea of what customers are facing in terms of a problem, or is there a new issue or a new feature that they're requesting. So you can notice here, I'm plugged in even with existing customers, right? Then towards the afternoon, I'm doing what is known as backlog grooming. When I say the word backlog grooming, I have my product, I have a roadmap, what I'm going to build for the next 2 years, but what am I turning out in the next 4 to 6 weeks? And within that, I have 50 items. What do I want to work on first? So the rest, I put them on backlog. Then I decide, we are finishing up on these items. Can I put these next 2 items, and why? Right? And I'm working with the engineering team hand in hand to decide, do they have the skill sets? Do they have the resources? What if there is a major vacation coming up? Should we plan for it now or later after the vacation? So things like that. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. And here, though I gave you a daily view, which is by far those activities that I mentioned, some things are done on a weekly or a monthly basis. Okay. I will not go through everything, but you kind of get a feel for now. I want to open up, leave more time for questions. And a startup company, just one quick point is, because we are still building the product, I met quite often with sales. I'm trying to find out, how do you plan to sell the product? How are you reaching out to the customers? What do you need at that early stage? Once the customer shows interest, what do you need? So things like that. So I'm helping build some features from a product. Should I prepare advanced documentation? Should I prepare prototypes for them? in the established company, I'm going and visiting clients, right? For example, I went and met with a major client on the Silicon Valley, and I cannot reveal some names, but here they had a roadmap that they were building, and they had a roadmap for the next 1 year, what all they're working on. They're saying, okay, Venky, we are going to start working with international customers, and we need phone numbers, and we need to send messages to international mobile devices. Can you help us? So I come back to my company and say, guys, we don't have this, but our client has promising X amount of dollars in revenue. It should be hundreds and thousands of dollars. Shall we invest and work with a partner over the next 6 months? Should we do this? So that becomes an investment strategy. That becomes more work for me in terms of justifying why we need this. Why is it? Are we building it only for one customer? And by the way, if you go and say that this big company is working with us and we have international presence, can we attract the next 3 companies to come and sign up with us? If I have that, I work with the sales and say, do you have hooks into these big companies? Can we put together a most probable strategy that within 3 years we can acquire 5 customers and bring, I'm just throwing numbers, $2 million of revenue per year extra from what we do? If the answer is yes, strong probability, then I pitch it to my leadership, then get their approval, we go invest and we go spend money on that. So these are the things that will happen, not on a daily basis, but it takes time, it takes customer visits and so on. Okay, I'll go on to the next slide, please. Okay, while I was putting together this, I was also told to add a few comments beyond what happens on the daily or a weekly or a monthly basis for a product PM. How can somebody grow into a PM role? How can they grow once they're in there? What do they do, right? So I tried to, again, these are not a concrete or a complete list. These are, in my opinion, one of the most key things that you need to work on if you're not already working on or improve upon to make you a better fit for a PM or grow well within a PM role. Okay, so I have some examples while I go through this. One of the first skills is voice of the customer, right? It's always good to have bright ideas. You can have an idea to solve something nobody has thought of, but do you know if that is a problem for only, I'll take India as an example, is it only for the extremely wealthy people in India and for a very small percentage, and are you happy with that population of people? Or is it a problem faced by every common person who has a mobile device in their phone, in their hand? Is it going to affect them? So you need to decide who your customer scope is. You need to understand that. So that is the level of understanding I'm saying. When I say voice of the customer, doesn't necessarily mean that I know I talk to customers all day. You need to go beyond it. You need to know what's going to happen now, in the next few months, the next year, and how long will that product live? Because I don't know if you saw earlier, it's important for a product manager not only to maintain the products, but also decide when to shut down a product. It's not easy to just go and say, I'm not going to support this. I mean, when Windows or other big products, when they say they're going to deprecate or stop supporting a product, they don't do it overnight. They do it over time, right? So that's what you need to find out. This product or this idea that I have, how long is it going to be? Is it worth it? So that is the extent to which you would analyze your customer wants and needs. Now, once you understand that, how do you translate that to the product requirements? Because keep in mind, you are that bridge, you are the PM, you are that person who is trying to say what you want to build, why and when, in terms of timing to the market. And who are you talking to? You're talking to your managers, your leadership, and to your engineers, and even that quality assurance person who needs to understand how to test it. So you need to be able to translate that, right? You need to be also able to translate to operations. Quite often I've seen people say, you need to know how to write good requirements so that your engineer knows how to build it. Now, I'm saying even beyond that, does your customer support person know how to support it? If some products are so technical, you need a person from your company to handhold a customer to put them on board, then you need to keep that person also as your customer. It's not the end customer. It is your customer support, the technician, even he or she is your customer. Okay. That's what I mean when I say voice of the customer. Please do not take it only as the end person, the end user, the end customer. Okay. Then you need to be aware of the development process. You are not the one who is developing, but you need to be aware of what development process do you want to build. Okay. Quite often and very popular is Agile and Scrum, right? The simple reasoning behind that is, how quickly can I build a feature and make it visible to customer and make it transparent and get their buy-in quickly so that before I go full scale on my product, can I make that product really robust and good quality, right? You would have heard a term, as I mentioned earlier, the minimum viable product. What is that you want? And I've mentioned a link at the end, by the way. You can do some additional reading on that. So you need to decide on what development process works for you. Okay, many people shrug saying that waterfall is too old, it's ancient. It may not be. Depending on the nature of the product, sometimes waterfall is the only way to do it. In a highly regulated environment, if it's very important that you need to check everything off before you go to the next stage, waterfall may be the option. But in today's startup mentality, products that are coming up quick and they're dying quick, people resort to Agile, Scrum, rapid prototyping. Okay. So try to understand what the development process means for you. And it also is very important into which engineering team works better for you. Okay. And what are they used to? Tools. There are tons of tools, by the way. And if you look at Agile, they'll give you hundreds of tools. If you look at product management, there are hundreds of tools. My take is, just go and find, if you're already working in a company, they're already using some tools, try to use that, try to get to know what you're building. Or if you think it's not working out, then do some research and pick what's best for you. Okay. But one thing I will tell you is, do not let a tool decide how you're going to build your process. Instead, you decide what is the best process you want to go by and adapt one or more tools. Okay. So for example, when I was in the startup company, we used AHA a lot. AHA was our tool for product road mapping. It had very cool integration into Jira. We were able to integrate, these are the features I'm building in AHA, and I will pick them and I will say migrate to Jira. They became user stories for the engineers, and the engineers built that, and the QA built the issues out of that. So I had an end-to-end relationship between the feature. And then I could also say, once you close all the items in Jira and you say it is pass, it automatically comes to AHA and say this feature is complete, right? So that worked really well. Small company and things. When I came to Bandwidth, it did not work because people were already entrenched with so many other things. They didn't want to pick up a new tool called AHA. They didn't want to do anything with it. So there's no point in pushing a tool just because you think it worked well in one company. That's the point I'm trying to make. People management is a good skill to work on. Again, here, be patient, right? Please understand, if you as a PM, it's teamwork. Sometimes you think the PM has got a lot of power. No, as I mentioned earlier, you have to lead without authority. You can command, but you cannot demand. I've seen this in many auto rickshaws in India. It says, command, respect, do not demand. That's a very simple leadership quality, right? You need to understand that. You need to understand that if I get my leadership buy-in and the market buy-in that I need to build this feature, it's not enough. Please get the buy-in of the engineers too. Do not ignore them. Okay. You can't just go say, I got approval from my CEO or my leadership. You guys have to build it. No, you have to be justified in asking that. You have to do that homework even before going to the leadership saying, can you build it? Okay. So the people management becomes a big deal. You need people to help you. It's a teamwork at the end of the day. Hand in hand with that automatically comes the communication skills, right? How do you present this information? You just cannot go to your leadership and say, by the way, I just came back from the customer side in Silicon Valley, big customer. They're promising us $2 million if you go international. Let's go ahead and build it. He's going to chase you out of the room, right? You go and say, customer X, with so many customers of their end users, They're going to bring in so many transactions. This is the revenue from one customer. By the way, I already talked to sales, and they're going to line up 4 more customers, very probable, and they're going to bring in these additional transactions, additional revenue. By the way, it costs us to build this $500,000 over 6 months. I need to hire 4 people. And by the way, here is the ROI, and over the next 2 years, this is the revenue I'm going to make. That is how you communicate. That is how you present, document it, right? Then you have to time it well. You went and met with the customer, say in the month of December, you are too busy. You cannot pick it up in April and say, okay, now I'm going to work on it. You need to decide, what should I drop? What should I pick up? So the timeliness is where I'm coming from in terms of communication. Okay, I've been asked many times the technical skills. How technical should you be? Do you need to know how to work APIs? Do you need to know how to code? My simple answer always is, understand the technologies that are going into your product, understand its pros and cons, and understand how to exploit it. You don't have to be a master at it, and respect it, and respect your engineers' feedback as well. That is a level of understanding. My favorite philosophy is, if you're a technical guy, it's easier to be a product manager on a technical product. It helps, but it's not essential, because all the other things are more important as well. But you definitely have to appreciate the technology that goes into your product. Okay, I'm going to go quickly. I know we're running out of time. I need to have some for questions. Get your feet wet. When I say that, please, the product that you're pushing, make sure you use it. Sometimes you may or may not be able to use it completely, but you need to or sit with the people who are using it. Okay. If it is a mobile product, like say, for example, the messaging collaboration, we used it within the company every day to send a message, to send attachments, then we found so many bugs ourselves. Everybody used it. So I'm saying, use it, learn it, and be with the product that you are pushing. Okay. And also appreciate how things are built. When I say get your feet wet, if your engineer or if your dev lead says, it takes me 2 weeks to build this feature, which you think is a small feature, then spend some time with them, understand, don't question it, understand why. Okay. That gives you a better appreciation. Last but not least, ongoing thirst for learning. That has to be there. There are so much material out there. I mean, I can go on and on, but I mentioned some here. What I do is, in fact, recently on Saturday, there was a product camp that is a nationwide product camp, free to attend, in a first come, first serve. Local companies come in. We met at the campus of MetLife. We had people coming from different companies and presenting different topics, leadership styles, what is the MVP style, and how do you improve the user experience? How do you do product design? There were like 25 topics over the entire day. So go and attend those. And it's also networking. You may be able to find out somebody is working on a cool product and a feature that you could learn from. Okay, so do the research on Gartner, Forrester, all those things. And who can grow into a PM? That's another question I've been asked. I'm saying anybody can, but typically do not discount, obviously the business analysts and the junior PM have a path, but I'm saying project managers, QA, developers, everybody can get into it as long as you understand the skills that I mentioned above and you can relate to those. Okay. I'm going to stop at that. I think the next slide is just a list of links, and that is something you guys can look at it yourself. I'm opening it up for questions, mister. Okay. Oh. Okay. Do you want me to pick them off, or you want to coordinate that, mister?
I can ask you the questions if you want, or I think we've covered a lot of those questions in the PPT that you spoke about. So like, is tech important to be a product manager?
Yeah.
I think I'll just go down and I'll start picking the questions, and if we have already covered, we can go on to the next question.
Okay, so let me take this one from Ananta. Said, managing trade-offs, 80% versus 20% customers. Ideally, no customer should be left out. What's your take on this? I understand that. I mean, especially at Bandwidth, what I was doing was again, I'm going to give basic numbers. Say the total revenue was $1 million that is coming every month. I look at the customers and say, I found out very quickly 15 customers made up 85% of the revenue. That doesn't mean I'm ignoring the others. Okay. I pay a little bit of attention and say, well, what are they working on? Depending on the nature of the product, like say it is, now in my case, it was anybody could sign up to start becoming a customer. They can go online and self-sign, but they're spending only $1 a month. Then typically these are developers trying to test my product. So obviously I'm not going to pay attention to that. I'll focus on the top 15 customers bringing 85% of the revenue, make sure they're good to go. But then also once in a while, we send some kind of a communication to the rest of the customers. Hey, did you know we are building this? Did you know we can do this? And did you know we have a new group messaging API? Do you want to work on it? Who knows? They may take more interest in our features and may become in the top 15 customers. Okay, I hope that helps. One question that I'm looking at is, how much is marketing a part of product management today? I mean, sometimes this role is kind of overlapping, but what I've done is limit myself to the message of what the product can do and leave the product marketing to add more language to it. But as a product manager, you put the context. For example, when we were releasing that group messaging product collateral at a conference, I had to understand who all are participating. And I had to tell, okay, this company works with predominantly teams. So let us say the message is, do you want to quickly enable messaging for your teams? Not start off with saying, do you know how to send group messaging? We have an API. There's a difference to it. I help provide that context, but the marketing folks sometimes are good at understanding the other soft skills that are required to attract a customer. So I would, if you're not a savvy person with the marketing knowledge of it, I would try to separate those two responsibilities. But you as a product manager definitely must be involved with the content and the message that you're conveying. Okay. In terms of a design decision, there's always a conflict with the UI and the designer. I totally agree with that, but that is a very common problem. And it is, you have to reach that happy medium. Okay. When I say happy medium, meaning sometimes it is very concrete. You can say that I want my customer to sign up within 3 clicks. That's very concrete, very quantitative. Sometimes the design is not very quantitative, it's qualitative. So that's where you will have to spend a little more time to understand that. One way to get past it that I've done in the terms of the messaging collaboration, it was a brand new application. We didn't know who our customers would be. We knew their personas. So we hired a third party. We came up with a few features and asked them to test it with this third party. They went to about 15 customers and then got the feedback. Then we both agreed on something and we moved forward. Again, is that a luxury that everybody can do? Probably not. Okay. But it is a trade-off at the end of the day. But it requires an analysis of pros and cons. It's not one answer for it. I'm sorry. I don't have a quantitative response to that. Okay. Do we need to have skill to communicate and pitch about the product to the tech team or to the business team in different languages? We have to. I'll give you a simple example. Years ago, we were building a customer-facing a patient in a hospital, right? They are going to check in themselves because in the US, typically, I'm sure even in India, it's done in many cases. A patient goes into the point of service. Somebody is talking to them. They're filling out 15 forms. And then when they come back a month later, they have to do that again because it is all in paper. So we implemented a patient-facing kiosk, okay? But you have to understand who is using that. A 60-year-old patient, female patient undergoing cancer treatment is coming. What is going on in her mind? Is she really savvy enough to use that kiosk by herself, taking out her credit card and swiping? So you need to put that message to your developers, to your team, saying that this is the customer that using, guys. Make it easy, make it more responsive. So the latency should be within seconds, right? So things like that. So I've always spent time in, when I do a walkthrough for my product, I don't talk about the product feature saying, here is where I want the login button to go. I want 4 clicks. I just tell them the story like I just said. This is the customer who is using. And by the way, we need that signature, because if the signature is not captured, that customer could be subjected to a lawsuit, and they'll realize in hundreds and thousands of dollars of lawsuits. It is that important that we capture the signature. Then I go into the product, so it helps. Okay, what else? How much time do we have? And I'm okay until the close of the hour for me.
I think we can take a couple of more questions. So, Prashant had asked how to transit to a PM role from a developer role. Why would companies prefer a developer over an MBA?
Yeah, so I mean, I do like having MBAs on team, but I also like the developers because, as I said earlier, my personality is I lean towards the technical person. But then again, I'm not discounting the role played by a developer. The comparison is the MBA has a more strategic, broad vision of things, where things are going, financial aspects, how to understand the competitive landscape. So you as a developer, if you haven't done that, you have a lot to grow up into, right? Where I said earlier, if you recall, you don't have to be heavily technical to be a product manager, but having the knowledge helps you immensely. So that is why some people would prefer an MBA person, because I've seen job descriptions. In fact, I'm applying now to look for a different job because I went and retrained myself. I became a certified information system security professional. Why? Because I believe in cybersecurity. I believe in that. So here I am, seasoned product manager, trying to learn some technical stuff because I want to do a better job, right? I may have an MBA also, that doesn't matter, but I still want that technical skill, so it helps me. That doesn't mean I'll go learn about the cryptography, the keys, and how they're built, how they're saved. I won't sit and start working on Python language and wonder how to do all kinds of other stuff that the developers do. I don't have to, right? So long story short, you understand now why the MBAs are more preferred than developer. But I'm saying, as a developer, spend time in building up those skill sets that I mentioned in one of the slides, and you will definitely be the right person to do that.
Okay. Another question a couple of people have asked, that how to transition from QA to product management, any do's and don'ts while transitioning?
No, I mean, the QAs, in my opinion, are actually more suited to quickly transition, because I personally have mentored a couple of QAs who became BAs, business analysts, and then they became as the junior and also the product PM. How do they transfer? Because you already have knowledge, right? You already are discussing or working with the customers, hopefully. Hopefully you as a QA are not isolated. If you are isolated, please reach out and talk to your product managers, anybody saying, how can I interact with the customer? Or how can I be more closer to the customer? You get that. Why I say that is, the more you understand the persona of the customer, who is using it and why are they using it, how are they using it, you may have a vision saying, hey, when I'm testing the product, it's so easy for me to use it. I can test it. Why is this customer fumbling? Don't put the customer at blame, right? You understand why they're doing it. So you're already in that, right? You're already facing what the customer is facing even before they see it. So you're definitely in the right position. But how do you transition? Again, I keep going back to those skill sets I mentioned. How can you take a customer requirement and translate it into a requirement that your technical person can understand? That's a very simple start. Then build up from that, right? Always think broad, think strategic, and make sure you understand the big picture and what is the benefit for the long term. Go beyond the short term. That's what I'm trying to say.
All right. We have another question from Abu, who is asked, what is the importance of PM in logistics, transportation, and supply chain management?
I mean, the question sounds a little vague to me, and let me interpret it. When you say, what is the role of PM? I think the PM, as I mentioned, maybe I didn't call it out well enough. When I say product, don't always think of a product. Even a service is also a product, right? So when you go to logistics and other things, say, for example, the time to get a product shipped to you on time is a big deal. That itself becomes a product per se, but it is a service at the end of the day. So the product managers can play a role in any domain, in my humble opinion, right? It's very concretely defined in a manufacturing. If you're building that car, if you're building that phone, that becomes a product. If you are looking at software, you have WhatsApp, that's a product, right? But if you are completely in the business of shipping, let's take FedEx or Indian Postal Service, what is the product there? It's not the letters, right? Those letters are written by somebody. The service, the product that you offer is sending that material, whatever it is, package, a letter, from one person to the other in a timely fashion while you're taking care of the logistics, whether handling it, if somebody says they want it to go in 2 days, how do you make sure it gets there in 2 days? Yeah, all of these play into treat that as your product. Okay. What are your customers receiving at the end of the day? It need not be a concrete thing they can hold in the hand. It is a service that they experience is also a big deal. So yes, the product manager's role fit very well into that as well.
I think we'll just take one more question. So Satish has asked, so far your experience, give us some clue on building a successful product roadmap.
The key to that is understanding that vision, because I always say some people prefer a 5-year roadmap. I'm saying, especially if you're in IT, a 5-year roadmap is way too much to consider, because I'm sure in the next 1 or 2 years, blockchain will become so big. I'm sure you guys have heard of that, blockchain. It may disrupt many companies that have been so far working well for the past 15 years. So the way I would look at it is look for a product roadmap, whatever product you're supporting or service, for the next 2 to 3 years. And especially in IT, it becomes important. It is very nimble, very agile. When I say agile, I'm not talking about the product framework. Agile means it's quick to change, right? So for example, I had in my product roadmap for the next 6 months, I'm going to build this because my product life cycle, the sprint life cycles of 4 to 6 weeks. Some companies do it within 2 weeks, by the way. So every 4 to 6 weeks, I'm building something. So I have the near-term vision of the roadmap for the next 6 months, what I'm definitely going to build. And when I say I'm going to build this, I have everything, requirements, projections, customers, experience, everything is already documented. That doesn't mean I spend all the work and come what may, you have to build that. No, your product map should be such that, as I said earlier, I went and met this client and they said, Venky, if you can help us with the international market, we'll go with you. I had no plan for building international. And it takes me 8 months to build a product for international. Okay. I'm just making up numbers. So I come back to my roadmap and see, I have these 4 features. It brings me, again, numbers, right? $500,000 per month. But if I drop 2 of them and if I spend 6 months and I bring these 6 engineering resources into this, can I change my roadmap now to push those things to next year and bring in the international piece and then deliver the thing? So your roadmap should be flexible that way as well. Okay. You should definitely have more maturity or more concrete ideas for the next 4 to 6 months. And in the IT world, having a roadmap and a vision for the next 2 years is very ideal. Grab the ideas from anybody, your customers, your sales guys, even your colleagues, saying, hey, I wish our product did this. Just put that down. Build that up. That's what is known as ideation, right? Have that for the next, maybe it's in the 3rd year. You never know. And that could become a reality all of a sudden, right? So again, just to summarize, the best thing to do with the roadmap is have a clear picture of where your customer, where your domain is going, and have a more concrete vision for the next 4 to 6 months. And as you increase to 1 year, it becomes a little more looser. And then in the 3rd year, it becomes one of those nice to have features on your product. Hope that helps.
Definitely. I think we have a lot more questions coming up, and we do not really have a lot of time to take up these questions. But what I believe is we've answered a lot of these questions, and a lot of questions are being repeated again and again. So, in case there's any new question, we would reach out to you and just ask you to answer those questions. But thank you so much for the session today.
No
It was a
problem.
brilliant session, and I hope the students got what they actually wanted to know about product management and what happens in a day of a product manager. And they were able to differentiate between a product manager and a project manager, and will be keen on taking product management as the next steps in their career.
Yeah, and I hope so too. And again, feel free to give me your feedback as well. And send me some of the questions. I will not promise I'll answer it today, but I'll try to get to it. Okay?
Definitely.
All
Thank you
right.
so much for taking the session today.
Thank you. Take care. All the best to all of you. Take care.